I want to welcome everyone. As those who don't know me, I'm Chief Tom O'Hearn. I'm your police chief here in Westmont. I want to thank you all so very much for coming out with the weather conditions being what they are. It does mean a lot to us. You are going to see a fantastic presentation tonight. It's on a topic that we don't always talk about, and it's the suburban secret, heroin in DuPage County. It's not only in Westmont, this is a county-wide problem. And you're going to see representatives here tonight to talk to you from throughout the county. And we're very proud to have the representatives there and the speakers that you're going to hear tonight. I would like to recognize all the Westmont elected officials who are here. I know we have Trustee Harold Berry. If there's any other elected officials here, if you could stand up in case I didn't see you. Trustee Jim Addington just walked in. Thank you, Jim. Mayor Gunter, not Mayor Ron, Mayor Gunter expresses his welcome. He's unable to make it tonight. He's out of town, but did wish to let everyone know that he is here with us in spirit. With that being said, I would like to also thank Detective Michael Weibler, who most of your students know, see him on a daily basis here in the school, but also thank him for his hard work and his dedication to putting this program together. He is the one that put this together, and not myself. And so I just want to thank Mike for all his hard work. So with that being said, I would like to introduce to you a very good friend to the Westmont Police Department and a very good friend to all of us here in Westmont and throughout her district, State Representative Patty Bellock, who would like to welcome you as well.
Well, thank you very much, Chief, and thank you to all of you for coming out on a night like tonight. It's stormy and windy and snowy, but we thank you all for coming out because this is such a huge issue. And I love being in Westmont. Usually it's either in a parade or at the Veterans Memorial, but coming to speak to parents and to high school kids is one of my main things, is to get out to the public and talk about issues that are really important to our community. And about 5 years ago, I had a friend come to me and she told me that her son was a heroin addict. And I said, really? So we sat down and we talked about it. And then I had another friend just about a week later who was a child psychologist, and she said, in this area. And she said, you know, Patty, we've really got to do something about this heroin problem. And I said, really? I said, I didn't know about it. And that was 5 years ago. So hardly anybody was talking about it then. And I had been very active in substance abuse and those issues, as so is Representative Dennis Rebelletti, who came tonight too, all the way from the north part of Elmhurst, because he's been a staunch supporter of substance abuse and trying to help kids and parents face issues that are so important to their development and getting through the adolescent years, and knowing how important this is. When Chief told me, I've had 5 forums now over the last 2.5 years throughout this area, my district, you know, and on every one of them we've had a really good turnout just like this. On some we've even had 250 and 300 people, just because it is a suburban secret. Most people had no idea that this was such a huge issue in DuPage County. They mostly think about heroin as a problem in the city of Chicago and in the inner cities. Well, it's quite the reverse now, as you'll hear from the people that are going to speak tonight. It is an extreme problem in the collar counties and in DuPage County, and I'm going to let the other speakers talk about the specifics. But I just want to thank all of you. I thank you for being here tonight. I thank you for your interest in this. And I want to say to all the high school kids here tonight, thank you for being here, because this issue, I'd like all of you to be leaders on it so that you can understand the issue itself and be leaders within your community, because that's what we need, is people, the youth of our communities, to educate themselves and their friends on how important this issue is. And the doctor and the other police can tell you the incidence of just a one-time mistake, how costly that can be. So thank you all again for being here. I consider Westmont one of my homes. I live right down the street, and I thoroughly enjoy being with all of you. So I look forward to the speakers tonight, because every time I'm at one of these forums, I learn something new also about heroin. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. And next, I'd like to introduce State Representative Dennis Rebelletti, would also like to have some opening and welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Dennis Rebelletti. I'm from Elmhurst, and I've been in the General Assembly for 7 years. And almost from day one when I got into the General Assembly, I dealt with the issue of heroin. When talk about being DuPage County's dirty little secret, people in Elmhurst didn't want to really talk about it. How could there be heroin at York High School? But it was there. Prior to coming to the General Assembly, I was a narcotics prosecutor in Will County in Joliet. And day after day, I saw young people die. One of the stories that touched me the most was when I was in drug court, and there was a mother of twins. And she went through drug court. She was probably about 19 or 20 years old, and she successfully completed it. And we were all very happy for her. She was going to get back up on her feet, and then she relapsed. And I hadn't heard much about it, and I called some friends down there recently to see what had happened. She relapsed, and she died, leaving those twins without a mother, and the father was no longer in the picture. And what we learned is that heroin has changed so much over the years that now it's so pure, and I know that State Attorney Berlin and the coroner will talk about it, that it used to be you could only inject it with a needle, and who would try that? Most of us don't like needles. We're scared of needles. Who wants to go get a flu shot, let alone inject yourself with heroin? Now it's so pure you can snort it, and you know that. And only you'll have to try it one time for you to be hooked. It's about 95% pure. And it strikes people of all ages. I've seen people in their 60s that they try to function on heroin. People tell you can function on heroin, but you can't. You can't hold a job. You can't go to school. And what I have seen happen is that it's an individual disease, but it's also a family disease. Because the addict usually steals from their friends, they steal from their families, they lie, they cheat, they become much different people than you ever recognize. But it's these forms like this that can actually bring the community together, recognize there's a problem, and begin to make a difference one person at a time. They don't call North Avenue, Route 64, or 290 the heroin highway for nothing. We used to have people from Will County drive all the way from Shanahan, almost in Grundy County, 3 times a day to the United Center to buy heroin. That's about 65 miles each way. So I've worked on some legislation to increase penalties on people who deliver heroin. I've prosecuted drug-induced homicides because all it takes is one hit of heroin with fentanyl and you're dead. It's very unfortunate, but it's these types of town hall forums that actually bring things to light. And I think, as Representative Belloc said, we always learn things, but by all working together, I think we can go a long way in combating the problem. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Our next speaker is our DuPage County State's Attorney, Robert Berlin. He is one of the chief law enforcement officers here in DuPage County. He oversees the county's prosecutor's office or the state's attorney's office out in Wheaton, and would be the person who oversees the prosecution should you make the mistake and get involved in heroin or drugs. So with that, I'd like to introduce our state's attorney, Bob Berlin.
Thank you, Chief Mulhern, and thank you all again for coming out on this wintry evening to listen and learn something about what's going on in our community, because what we have in this county is a crisis. Over 80 heroin overdose deaths in the past 2 years. Rich Jorgensen's going to speak later. He's going to give you the exact numbers. But that is an epidemic that's going on. And it's in DuPage County. It's in all of the collar counties. And heroin knows no boundaries. The victims of heroin range from 16 years old all the way to people in their 60s. And as was said earlier, the heroin today is so pure that in many cases people use it once and they get addicted. And that's part of the problem that's going on. So what has happened? What has caused this tremendous outburst in heroin use? The heroin, most of it that's coming into the country is coming from Mexico. Half of the heroin comes from Mexico, followed by South America and Asia. And to give you some idea of what's coming into the country, between 2008 and 2012, the amount of heroin seized at the United States-Mexican border increased 232%. The purity of heroin has increased tenfold from where it was in the early 1980s. And as Representative Reboletti told you earlier, people can snort it, it can be smoked, it doesn't have to be injected. Back in the 60s and 70s, that's what turned people away from it because no one wanted to put a needle in their arm. But that's not necessary anymore in order to use this drug. What the research is also showing, which is extremely alarming, is that 4 out of 5 new heroin users have previously used some type of prescription medication. And there's a tremendous correlation between the two. And if you take nothing away from tonight other than this, those of you who have prescription medication at home, you need to lock it up, and when you're done using it, you need to get rid of it. Oftentimes, you go to the dentist, you go to the doctor, they give you a pain pill prescription. Usually it's 30 pills, sometimes it's more, and most people use not even 1/5 of that. They'll use 5 or 6 pills over the course of a few days, and what happens to the rest of it? It stays in your medicine cabinet, and that's when children are getting into it. They use it, whether it's Vicodin, Percocet, any type of these painkillers, and it's the same effect on the human body that heroin has. So what are we doing about it at the county level and the state's attorney's office? Our approach has been twofold. First of all, we have the law enforcement approach. And I'm going to talk about some of the things we're doing, but I'm going to tell everyone here tonight that this is a problem we cannot arrest and prosecute our way out of. The criminal justice system is simply not equipped and set up to deal with this epidemic. And the reality is that people who are addicted to heroin, putting them in jail or prison does absolutely nothing to solve the problem. But what we are doing is going after the drug dealers. And as Representative Reboletti mentioned earlier, he and Representative Belloc in the General Assembly gave us some significant tools to help in that regard. And they've increased the penalties for people who sell heroin, but they've also given us the state version of the Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organization, or RICO law. And we recently just used that law and charged it for the first time in DuPage County, a 31-defendant operation between DuPage and Cook County. And this heroin drug trafficking ring was bringing in almost $3,000 a day in heroin sales. So a significant case with significant penalties for all of those involved, but unfortunately it's the tip of the iceberg as to what's going on out there. And these cases take months to build, and they take a tremendous amount of resources. The DEA was very involved. We worked together with them, along with a number of police agencies, in order to build and make this case. It went on for about 6 months. The cost of that type of an operation is immense. In order to get all of these big drug dealers off the street, we would have to have hundreds of these, just to give you some idea of what's going on out there. But we are making a concerted effort to go after the drug dealers. The users are a different story. The users, those who are willing to get treatment, we're trying to put them in our drug court, which is a diversion court where they get treatment, they get help, and the hope is that they'll complete the program, they'll graduate from the program, and get the case dismissed and expunged from their record. Since 2002, we've had over 682 defendants admitted into the DuPage County Drug Court, and our graduation rate is just over 48%, which is actually pretty good compared to the national average. The problem we see with heroin is there's relapse. And sometimes it's weeks later, sometimes it's months later, but it's a very, very difficult habit to break, more so than any other drug that's out there. And over 60% of the defendants who are in our drug court right now have a heroin addiction. Some are addicted to other drugs, but heroin is part of 60% of those. But the idea in this drug court is to stop the addiction. But before I finish, let me just give you some idea of when we talk about how strong and how pure the drug is. If you go out for a nice dinner, you're going to get 200 milligrams of dopamine, and dopamine is a chemical that reacts in your brain, and it basically gives you a good feeling. So 200 milligrams for a very good dinner. Someone who uses heroin gets about 1,000 milligrams of dopamine, so 5 times that amount. And that just gives you some idea of how addictive the drug is. So the county, DuPage County, has appropriated $100,000 so far towards the education effort. The county approved $50,000, and our sheriff, Zaruba, agreed to appropriate $50,000 out of his budget to fight this epidemic. And the second part of what we're doing, other than law enforcement, is education, and that's what we're all doing here tonight. That's why you're here. And the reality is, the way to beat this problem and this epidemic is through awareness and education, letting the public know, letting your friends and neighbors know about this drug and how dangerous it is. And to all of you students out there, I see a number of you here tonight, this is a drug you cannot ever use, because if you use it once, there's a likelihood you'll be addicted. And if you get addicted, the consequences in many cases can be catastrophic. You absolutely have to know enough about this to be able to say no. Don't experiment with it. Learn about it, which is what you're going to do tonight, and just don't do it. And parents, I can't stress enough to spread the word about what you learn here tonight. It is a grassroots effort, what we're undertaking and what we've been undertaking in the county. And that's really the only way to rid the county of this problem. We can and we will succeed, but it's going to take all of you, everyone here tonight and everyone you know, to make a concerted effort to beat this problem. So I commend all of you again for coming out here this evening to learn about what's going on, and please spread the word about what you learn here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Our next guest speaker is a near and dear friend of mine as well. When this problem started to come to light about this time last year, and with all the overdoses that we started to see countywide, DuPage County Chiefs of Police Association wanted to take a proactive stance, as did the Coroner's Office, State's Attorney, and all law enforcement in the county. And we created a video, and that is available online. If you go to the Village of Westmont website, www.westmont.il.gov, there's a link where you can view that video. It's on YouTube. Or if you're just to Google on, or not Google, but on YouTube, just search DuPage County Chiefs of Police, and the video will come up. You'll see a guest speaker on there, our next speaker on that video with, again, another speaker later on tonight. And that is Police Chief Kent Bartlett from the, Kent Williams from the Bartlett Police Department. Sorry, Kent. He is going to speak to us about trends that he has seen, and also representing not only the Village of Bartlett, but also the DuPage County Chiefs of Police Association. So please welcome Kent Williams from the Bartlett Police Department.
Boy, am I honored and humbled to be here this evening with this distinguished panel. I've had an opportunity to speak at many summits and seminars just like this, and they really are the answer, pulling a community together. And why am I here and not just limited to Bartlett? And Chief Tom Mulhern explained it a little bit. I was tasked to be the chairperson for the DuPage County's proactive response, not only in enforcement, that was so eloquently stated by State's Attorney Berlin. That's not going to be the answer here. It's part of the answer, but it's a small sliver of the answer. The answer is here tonight. It's pulling resources together and educating ourselves about this problem. And just from a cop's perspective, I've been doing this job for long time, about 29 years, if I can be honest with you. I was 21 years old when I started. I just turned 50. Boy, that's a long time. And I can tell you for the most of my career, heroin, come on. DuPage County, out in the burbs, I didn't see it. And when I did, holy cow, I mean, it was rare, but when you did, you kind of knew what you were looking at. And they were rare out here. Usually it was in the form of some form of burglary or somebody or a person down, and you just see them, and there were track marks everywhere, and they were just, they'd weigh 80 pounds and unbathed, and you didn't see a lot of it out here. You just didn't. And that was always an inner city problem. Boy, what a change. Boy, what a change. Several years ago now, the fatalities, the overdoses, and the uses are just off the charts. And we had to stop and say, what's going on? And as has been already said, it's not needles anymore. It's very pure. And remember heroin when we were, for the older folks, I mean, the thought of it. We never saw it at our parties. And if we did, we would call the police ourselves. It was a dirty drug. A dirty drug with the bands and the blood and the needles and oh my God, we never saw it growing up. Now it's everywhere. I hear from some of our kids in our town that they see more of it than they do the marijuana. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And it's no longer considered a dirty drug. It's kind of considered a clean drug. And you'll know more about that in a minute. All you got to do is sniff it. And this new generation of kids in the high school age are getting pretty comfortable sniffing things, and State's Attorney Berlin already brought that up, and I'm going to talk about that just a little bit more in a minute. This is a slide I put together several years ago after interviewing many addicts. It's not necessarily science. It's just an experiential theory that I came up with based on everybody I've been encountering for the last 15 years out in the western suburbs. And the way it goes is kind of like this. Here's all our normal. This is kind of just our normal sense of wellness, our normal sense of well-being. And for everybody, that's just a little bit different, but we'll just call that normal. And it's kind of considered a bump. That's what they call it. The users call it. Hey, you want a bump? And what is a bump? Well, like State's Attorney Berlin said, a bump is just absolutely off the charts. And it takes you up to a high that most describe, I've never felt that euphoric in my life. And what that is just a devastating injection of dopamine through the heroin that literally immediately rewires the neurobiology of the brain. The brain goes, you ever seen a baby get their first taste of sugar? I mean, whoa, 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 whoa. Well, that's kind of their brain's first experience with a sugar high. And we've all seen it with the little kid. You put a little icing on their mouth and they light up. Well, that's kind of the similar expression with people who experiment with dopamine. Oh my gosh. The problem with that oh my gosh is all that dopamine going into the brain at the first time, it does damage to the brain and the brain stops producing it like it did before because it just got overdosed with dopamine. So then when you finally come down, you've damaged the brain forever. I've heard one doctor explained to me, if you try heroin just once or twice, you're here for 45 years to get back to this if you never use it again. Instant damage done. Well, nobody wants to feel like this because you feel worse than you did the day before. So, hey, you know what you're going to do. You're going to get another bump. The problem is your bump is no longer quite as high as it was the day before, and your new sense of normal has now been again devastated. It's now dropped here. Well, that's no fun. And you know how to get high again, so you try another bump. The problem is your bumps get lower and your lowers get lower. And you can see what's going on here. Is you start chasing a high that you're never going to feel again, and every time you do, you create traumatic damage to the brain. And what I've kind of coined this is a predictable plummet of heroin usage. And what you were doing was chasing a diminishing high, and now what you're going to spend the rest of your life doing is running from a lifelong illness. And so you can see They have this distant memory of what normal was, and they're just trying to get back to it. So they keep trying this drug, and it becomes just this progressive failure where you never get there. And eventually you get your overdose. You get your overdose because you become desperate and you really do want to get back to what is a distant memory for you now. And then we get our fatal overdose. I had a guy, my narcotics officers had a guy in the department the other day, and I came in and interviewed him, and I showed him this. He goes, "That's exactly what happened." And he said, I was on heroin for a day and a half, and I was hooked. He tried it with his father, and they were both hooked almost immediately. And that's describing there. And when we arrested him, he was down here. I don't even get high anymore. I just wish I could get back to normal. I'm so tired of being so sick. He's describing that. So what do you do with that? If this is a predictable plummet, it is highly predictable. The beauty of something that's so highly predictable is it's preventable if you can get out in front of it and educate a community. And the only really answer to this predictable plummet is not even once. Not even once, as it was so eloquently said here before. This is not an experiential drug. This is not a, hey, I'm going to go find myself with my friends. No, this is, my life's over. And I'm going to destroy not only myself, but I'm going to destroy those who are nearest and dearest to me, my family. There's no options here. The only option is not even once. The problem is we get suckered into it, right? I've never heard a heroin addict that they all say the same thing. They all say, I thought I was better than that. I thought I could experiment. I thought I could beat it. It's predictable. It's predictable. Heroin dens, you know what they look like, right? You'll know a heroin den when you see it. They're dirty, they're run down, they're ramshackle. Most of them are in the inner city, and they're full of people who look like this, and therefore we don't have to worry about it much. Actually, all our experience now is heroin dens look more like this. They're usually bedrooms or basement rec rooms, and this is where we're seeing our heroin use now. It's not the rundown ramshackles that we think of in the inner cities. At-risk lifestyles, it's these guys, right? You know, society's dropouts. That's not what the statistics and all the research is showing us now in all our experiences. It's these people. It's actually the people trying to drop in or fit in. We hear a lot of this. Anxiety disorders, and when do those start bubbling up? High school, adolescence, and this whole angst to feel like you belong. And so maybe, and I've heard this story so many times, it's horrifying. Young, beautiful women with scholarship bound and great grades in high school who are just trying to fill in, and there's suddenly, geez, this cute upperclassman takes interest in them, and they go out, and next thing you know, hey, you want a bump? And you have somebody in an act of desperation trying to fit in, trying to belong, and next thing you know, horrifying stories. Horrifying stories. Western suburban girls with full ride scholarships academically, trying to impress an older classman who offers the bump, and literally 8 months later, prostituting themselves downtown on the L. Just to keep up with the addiction. It's predictable. At-risk lifestyles, this is what we're finding. These are the people that we worry about. At-risk lifestyles, believe it or not. These are the at-risk lifestyles. Active people. Active people. There's some consistencies in there. Most of it's very active. Our athletes. We're working with a wrestling star, a standout in the state now, a wrestler who had a twisted knee, went to the doctor, and next thing you know, 6 months later, he's turned to heroin. You're going to hear some stories like that this evening from families who have been directly impacted. Car accident victims. In other words, anybody that goes ouch these days is now suddenly a risk. And the reason was stated so eloquently by State's Attorney Berlin is it's the pain mitigators that were being prescribed. This was in USA Today back in October. No one wants to think that their fourth grader or fifth grader is being exposed at elementary school, but that's exactly what's happening, Naughton said. They're bringing them to school, to sporting events, to social activities, and they're saying, here, take this pill. It makes you feel good. It can't be that bad. I got it from my grandmother's medicine cabinet. It came from a doctor. What can be the harm? The problem is they're based on opiatics. Opiatics, and the most devastating opiatic is heroin, the highest content. But all pain mitigators, Vicodin, those are all opiatics. And so these kids get started on a opiatic prescribed by a doctor. My son got a scholarship to play baseball, turned an ankle. I went with him, and I didn't say anything. I didn't say what I said. I went to the ER, and they took an x-ray, and it swelled up, and they said, you're going to be in pain for a while. Here you go. I didn't say anything. I wanted to see what was going to go down. 65 Vicodin. 65 Vicodin for a swollen ankle. Now, then I told him what I do for a living. I told him what that creates. That creates not only my son as a heroin addict, but his two buddies, because if he's going to take any, he might take one or two to get through the night. But then the swelling goes down. He doesn't need the other 63. That's a heroin addict in the making. So we are also educating the medical community. I've had many dentists in the audience in auditoriums where I speak. I've had many ER doctors in the audiences where I speak, and they all come up and go, we had no idea. We are actually trained. That's our number one, is to make sure that and we get rated by our ability to mitigate pain. And this is how we've been trained to do. We had no idea that there was this causal effect. We've all been to the dentist. We've all been there, and we usually come home with this. And that's a problem. That is a problem. There is risk associated with that. As a matter of fact, today our kids, boy, when I was growing up, there weren't that many sleepovers. There just wasn't. I mean, we went home tired after we hung out all day, but we pretty much slept in our own beds, and then we hook up again in the morning. Sleepovers everywhere. Sleepovers all the time. All the way through high school. Sleepover, 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 sleepover. For the parents out there, a lot of these sleepovers are being called farming parties. And when I say that, I'm not talking about planting corn. Pharmacological parties, where everybody said, hey, raid your medicine cabinet. Just bring one or two. They won't notice it. But if we all bring one or two, we can come over and go into your basement and your rec room. We can crush them up and snort them. Wow, that was awesome. Can we do it again next week? Can I be honest with you? I got a beautiful high school daughter, and I'm always inviting people over to my house. Nobody wants to come to my sleepovers. Every weekend I offer to host a sleepover. I'll pop popcorn. I got a big screen TV. I'll watch Jaws with you. I mean, it's my favorite movie. Nobody comes. I'm a very lonely man. What's going on there? What's going on there? My wife and I are actually very nice people. You think we were social degenerates? Nobody wants to come to the Williams house for a sleepover. What's going on? Lock them up and get rid of them. As State's Attorney Berlin so eloquently said. Once you're done, if you're going to get your 30 Vicodin, take your 2, the swelling will go down, and then get rid of them. Many villages now have disposal programs. Call your village, and if they don't have one, one nearby will have one. You can bring them up and give them to us. We have them. Got to get rid of them. You got to empty the farm. A lot of kids will come over to your houses, teenagers, and they'll go, hey, Mrs. Wilson, can I use your bathroom real quick? Where's your medicine kit? And you're only going to miss one or two, and you won't even notice it. We have to be more proactive. I know most of you prior to this evening didn't know that. Many of us in law enforcement didn't know that. But it is pervasive. It is pervasive. It starts with the pain mitigators. It starts with the medicine cabinet. Farming parties. What does a person who will potentially hook you on heroin look like? We know what they look like, right? I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? I mean, or it'll be that, hi, I'm your local drug dealer. I mean, you just look around. Or this crazy guy, it's the guy down in that house that nobody cuts across their yard. I mean, those are obviously the guys you got to look out for, right? Or this guy, he'll hold you down and stick a needle in your arm. Those are the heroin dealers, right? Actually, they look a little bit more like this. In scenes that look a lot more like this. The person that's going to introduce you to heroin is not going to be some stranger in downtown Chicago. It's going to be somebody you trust, somebody that you would like to feel more connected to. And that's why we're such at risk out in the western suburbs where we're just all trying to fit. And that's why we're seeing a spike in abuse in the adolescent age groups. Everybody trying to fit. We all did, didn't we? We just didn't have heroin all over the place. So this is an issue that this is really... and the only answer I know to that is pervasive parenting. Can I be honest with you? Know what your kids are doing all the time. Know what they're doing in your basement. No. If you host sleepovers, that's great. But I can tell you something, and let me just say this now, and I'm not here to scold or mentor parents. I mean, I could use some myself, right? But I promise you this, your kids have enough friends. I promise you. They have tons of friends, more than enough friends. They're starved for parents. And what we see in my town and in jurisdictions around us is it's almost predictable. It's the parents trying to be those parents, the parents that are friends and kind of attractive to the other kids. And next thing you know, people are coming in, and you know what, go ahead and crack a beer or go down in the basement, we'll stay out of your hair. No. No. It's killing kids. It's killing kids. We all have a responsibility. It's here. It's everywhere. It's cheap. It's cheap. It's cheaper than cannabis. A hit of heroin goes for about $10. It's real cheap to get exposed to heroin. It'll be $10, maybe a day for a couple days. Then it's going to go to 40, and then pretty soon it's $480 a day, and now you're breaking into your grandmother's house just so you don't get sick. And that downward predictable plummet happens very quickly. The only answer to that is that we all get in this together, and I'm very proud and humbled to see the crowd here this evening, because it's the answer. It always has been. It always will be. It takes a village. We've heard that before. So I feel very honored to have been here this evening, and I will be here to answer any questions for you as we move along. But I get the distinct honor to introduce these next two gals. I don't believe in coincidence. I don't. I do believe in miracles. I was asked to speak at a fairly large church in my jurisdiction that was really out in front of this because they lost a parishioner. And boy, my life changed that day. I met so many people, and since then it's this kind of friendships, and they changed my life, and I get emotional just introducing them. But before I do, I just, Angelica and Felicia, to me, they're the definition of courage. And I heard a definition of courage many years ago, and it went kind of like this. You can measure a person's courage by their willingness to display vulnerability. Your willingness to be vulnerable to others is how you measure a person's courage. And because of that, I had the blessing several months ago now to meet some of the most courageous people I've ever met in my life, and I'd like to invite them up. Felicia and Angelica, if you come on up. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you to Westmont for putting this on and for seeing the need for this to happen in your community and in your county, and all the representatives that are here today. I am very honored to be a part of this forum and this team of people who are trying to equip our community with the best tools and education possible for them to have the most successful life possible. As Chief Williams said, my name is Angelica, and I teach 4th grade in Glendale Heights. And as a teacher, I like to stop and to think about the big picture. Right now, I'm about to share with you a part of my story. And in the mix of a story, there are characters. There's a setting, there's a plot, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's causes and effects and things that happen in the story that can change how the ending goes. And there's people along the way that come into your story and that can greatly impact the ending. And our hope tonight is that by our stories and the things that we have learned and come across in our life, that it impacts what you do with your life and the choices you make and the decisions that you are in control of, that it changes what you do in your life. Like I said, I'm a teacher. I have 27 kids that I just get to love on all the time. I have a 2nd grader of my own, so I'm a mom and come to these kinds of things from a mom's perspective now. I am also a board member, and our family founded a Heroin Awareness Foundation called LTM. And LTM stands for Louis Theodore Maselli, and it is our mission to educate and to just bring awareness to the growing epidemic in our community so that it prevents another family losing someone that they love. I grew up in a loving family. I had lots of aunts and uncles and cousins and brothers and a mom and a dad that just surrounded us with more love and food and entertainment that we could almost handle. We were almost way too spoiled with the love that we got from them. I went to a great school. I had everything that the world had to offer me at my fingertips, but I wanted to seek out fun. And I'm so thankful that I see high schoolers in here, because that is my heart, is to speak to you and where you're at in your life. When I was sitting in there, I don't know if I'd be here in an auditorium right now, but I commend you for doing that. Because in my mind, I thought I needed to have as much fun in my high school career or chapter. And I sought it out in different people that I thought would lend that to me. And that led me into situations and scenarios and into meeting certain people that were probably not the best for me to be around. And I had villains in my life. These villains were named Mom and Dad. I thought that they wanted to wreck my story, wreck my fun. They had no insight into my reality as a high school student. And I am so thankful that I had that invasive parent that stood up at the door when I was coming home late at night waiting to smell my breath. I was mad at my mom, like, get out of my face, lady. What are you all up in my business for? But she was going to be that parent to me and not my friend. She was not going to make my life easy through my high school years. She was going to fight for my freedom and my future and not have an enslavement and in bondage to an addiction. And I am forever thankful for that. So if you are here because your mom or your dad or someone from your school or your community tried to convince you to come here, I want you to thank them, because they care about who you are and what you're going to do with your life. And that is a hard position to sometimes be in, to be that kind of person who sometimes speaks the truth and love into your life. And so I am forever thankful for my parents for doing that. However, as a high schooler, I thought I knew it, I thought I could handle it, and I thought I could make the choices that I wanted to make because I was the smartest person on the universe. And so that led me to get introduced to heroin. When I met it, I had no idea the power that it had. I am so thankful that I was not ever personally a user, but walking along the side of someone who has used heroin or is in the process of fighting the heroin addiction, it becomes your world. It is no longer something that is a far-off, silly word about some drug addict in the city and that lives in a dirty alley and uses dirty needles. These were people who were my friends that I loved, that I hung out with, and that were I viewed as my family and my people. And to watch them turn into a person that I had no idea that they would become, someone that would hurt me, that would steal from me, that would do things that would completely abandon all trust and hope that I had in my friends. And it led down a very ugly path. But I'm very thankful I got plucked out of that. I got pulled out of that. But the reality is that heroin was still around. And heroin is powerful. Statistically, the chances of someone in this room getting faced with a heroin addiction, or a family member or a friend that you love that is fighting an addiction, is very high. Because heroin does not discriminate. It does not pick the pretty, the ugly, the fat, the tall, the thin, the athletic, the dumb, the smart, the employed, the unemployed, the school attendee, the dropout. It does not discriminate who it chooses to be its next slave. And so I want you to be aware that you are a statistic and you are not immune to being the next heroin addict. I am not immune. I know all this information, and still, if I do not apply what I'm learning and walking in truth and in the education that I have and apply the tools, I could be susceptible too. And I want us to really remember and think. We are going to be hearing some numbers in a minute and some statistics, and that's what we've been talking about. But I know the faces behind these statistics of people who have lost their life to heroin. They are not just a number. They are not just a name, but they are a person who has a story, and heroin stole it away. I'm going to tell you a really quick story about my cousin Louis Theodore Maselli. That's my cousin Louis, and he grew up in the same kind of environment as me. He had a family that surrounded him with love. He went to Driscoll Catholic High School, had 4 state champion football rings. He was the guy that every girl fought over. He was the friend that everybody wanted to know and to hang out. He was the most likable, lovable, charming, friendly person that honestly that I ever met. And he had lots of fun in high school. And when you have fun in high school, a lot of times marijuana is in the mix. And he dabbled with that, and he had fun once in a while doing that on the weekends with his friends, and then, had a few beers here and there, and really liked to just celebrate with his friends. But then this celebrating became a doorway into feeling good when you were feeling sad, when you had that bad breakup or that bad night or that bad, day at school or that argument with your parents. It didn't only just become something I went to when you celebrate, but it became something you went to for comfort and fulfillment. And when you felt the disappointments in life, it became the thing that you went to cope. And that was what my cousin was doing. And my cousin had a great heart, but still heroin does not judge against a good heart. And so the continued progression of addiction kept infiltrating his life. And he had surgery. I have two cousins. He has a brother named Vinny. Louis and Vinny are brothers. And these brothers got prescribed a bottle of Oxycontin with their name on it. It looked nice and pretty. A doctor gave it to him. Here you go, take it. They started taking it. They liked it. It made them not only take away the physical pain, but it took away some kind of pain that they felt in their heart. And so when that prescription ran out, you don't go back to your doctor and say, hey, can I have a refill? Because that's not where you go when your prescription is out. You go to the medicine cabinets and you tear apart what your family has and what you have access to. And when that runs out, you go to the streets. And those people on the streets sometimes are your friends at your high school. Hey, what do you have in your cabinet? What's your grandma got? And then when that runs out and those resources end, you go to the next one and the next one. And that leads you to kind of scary situations where when you're first the high school captain, football player, all-star, now running after this little pill just to feel good, you go to the next thing and the next thing, and that's when you get introduced to heroin. And here my cousin was, standing as a heroin addict, doing anything that he could to get his next high. That was not what he thought his story was going to be like. Those were not his dreams when he was in high school. That wasn't the things that he was striving for and working towards and going to practice for. He wasn't going to practice to become a heroin addict, someone who would destroy his family through his actions and the person that he became when he took this drug. That wasn't what he was thinking. That wasn't what he was working at. But that's what heroin did. And it invaded my family and took my cousins down. On August 7th, 2012, my cousin Vinny found his brother dead in his bed from a heroin overdose. My cousin Louis was fighting very hard to fight that addiction. He went to rehab. He thought he was good. He came home, started drinking a couple beers with his friends. I don't know what happened in those last moments. I wasn't there. But he had a weak moment, and boom, his story ended. And so now, our family, we don't come around the dinner table and talk about the football game and this thing and this, remember this, and how exciting this is. We come around and we talk about what are we going to do next to get in front of people to talk about heroin and what heroin has done in our life. It has invaded it. It has wrecked it. And my cousin, if he knew what was going on right now, he would be very proud, but he would be very heartbroken that this is the thing that now is defining our stories. Because when heroin enters it, that's what becomes the key vocab word that kind of dictates where your heart is going. And so our hope is that your family does not experience what we're feeling. We have family members right now that are still fighting this addiction, and the fear that plagues us every day, every time the phone rings, is overwhelming, but it's real. I could sit here and think, oh, heroin, that's a silly topic. But here I am now talking about it in reality. Heroin is real. It's not a joke. It's not to be played with, not even once. Your life is about the choices you make, and every single choice you make leads you somewhere. Where do you want to go in your life? You have to have those kinds of goals and those visions that you are working towards. So if you're a high schooler, if you're a fourth grader, if you're 2, if you're 25, if you're 70, you need to be making goals in your life that you are moving towards. And so right now, this is our goal. Our goal is so that anyone in this room will not ever pick up that drug. And that you now take this information that you have received and that you go and you talk about it. And you share it with your friends. And when you see your friend going down a path or a family member that's going down a path that could be scary, you intervene and you be that invasive person and speak the truth in love and fight for their future. I want to introduce to you someone in my life who's a character in my story that has been life-changing. I am just so blessed to call her my aunt. This is my cousin Louie's mom, and she is a warrior and a fighter, and I am honored to introduce you to her so you could hear a little bit about her story and hear from her heart. It's my Auntie Felicia.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you guys are here. I want to thank Westmont for holding this forum. So important. I want to tell you about my son Louis a little bit. He was such a wonderful little boy and typical little boy, and grew up in a very loving Italian family, like Angelica said, and I was a very involved mom. I was on the PTO board. I was a soccer coach, a football manager. I did everything to ensure that my kids had every advantage to have a successful life. And I thought I did that, as best as I could. And they grew up and they went to a private school in Addison, and things were going well, and they started drinking on the weekends with their football friends. And I thought, they're all doing it, and they all seem like they're all good kids. So, I kind of turned my back a little bit to it. Didn't like it, but turned my back to it a little bit, and wish I didn't. And anyways, so then Louis graduated from high school. Like Angelica said, he was very popular, and he loved football, and he loved girls. And went to college, and that's when he was introduced to heroin. I guess he was taking pills for a while, abusing them, and someone told him to snort this, just like that, snort this. Didn't ask what it was. He was tired, he was working at school, he was working. This will make you feel better, just snort it. He did. He snorted it. He didn't know what he was snorting. Not that, I did have the conversation and say, it was your job to say, what am I snorting? But it's just that quickly. And he said he fell in love with it. He fell in love with heroin the first time he snorted it. And changed my beautiful, sweet boy into someone I didn't know. It robbed his soul. I feel like the devil designs heroin to take people's soul down. It just changes everything. He stole from me. My son would never do that. He lied to me. He was, disrespectful to me when I called him out. And he was embarrassed and ashamed that this happened to him. He couldn't believe that this happened to him. He told me, Mom, I can't believe that this has happened in my life over just some bad choices. So I'm looking at you beautiful high school kids, and yeah, I would do anything if my son Louis was sitting where you're sitting and listening to this information that you're getting tonight. Maybe it would have changed his life. But we didn't know. We just didn't know. It wasn't it wasn't on our radar. The drugs were drugs, and marijuana and beer, were on our radar, but not heroin. We didn't have the benefit of education of it. So if it crosses your path, run like hell away from it. It will destroy you. And again, something like Angelica said, you guys have friend loyalty, and you don't want to tell or bust any of your friends, but maybe if one of Louis' friends would have told me that he was experimenting with OxyContin, and my son Vinny, if they were experimenting with it, maybe before it became into a full throttle addiction, it could have been stopped. So don't feel like you have any friend loyalty. You could be saving their life, and you could be saving a parent from feeling the way I do. So I just urge you, if you see someone in trouble, talk about it, find an adult. Someone will be out there to help. You could call LTM. We'll be glad to help too. The police will be able to help without busting them. So again, no friend loyalty. I look back, I know I was a good mother, but I look back in it, if I could change some things, I would. And they're not easy to talk about, but, I think, again, if I would have had the benefit of listening to someone like me, then maybe my story would have been different. I talked the talk, but I didn't walk the walk. I had a lot of parties at my house, and my kids saw me inebriated. And, it's something I'm not proud of, and I would change that, given the chance to, save my son's life. It's just typical cocktail parties with my friends, but, what message was I sending to my kids? And I would change that. And sometimes I would argue with my husband, and we're Italian, so I got a little verbal. And, I would probably keep that, between a husband and a wife, and try to, fight or work out a problem differently instead of fighting in front of them. I'm sure that made them feel insecure. They told me that. I would have spoiled my kids so much. They had everything, and never really had to work for it. I just loved spoiling them, and and I don't think that served them well. And I didn't really teach them to be spiritual. To fill that void in life of being human, and everyone gets anxious and depressed. And I didn't teach them to go to, to God. With what's going on in their life, because everyone's going to have bad moments, and I wish I could have taught them more spirituality and some more better coping mechanisms, and praying would have been one of them. And I wish I would have been more vigilant after their high school years. I kind of knew I did a good job. They were working, they were getting good grades, so I kind of lost track of them. They had cars and they had cell phones, and I thought they were fully functioning. I kind of stopped checking where they were, and I think after high school or late high school years and late teen years, you need to be more vigilant, parents. You can check. Most of you are still paying for their cell phones and their car insurance at that age. You can check those things, and you can have control. And there's nothing wrong with, having a curfew at 18 or 19. I'm sorry, kids, but there's nothing wrong with that. I wish that I would have done that. And I do think, this time in life is like a perfect storm for addicts. With the pain pill industry going on, and the marketing of cheap heroin, and the void in people's life, and the need for instant gratification. It's a perfect storm to breed an addict. So we do need to be vigilant. It can't be just a parent. It can't be just a school. It can't just be just a police problem. It does take a village, and I just wish that when you leave here, you guys will talk to 5 people. That's what I'm going to ask you. 5 people of tell them what you learned today. The more we talk about it, you know, the more we're going to help. It's not anything to be ashamed of. And if we keep it in a closet, and it's just going to breed and grow. I am not ashamed of my kids. You know, I'm so proud of them. He just made a bad choice. You know, they're not a bad kid. So, again, I want to thank you for listening. And, you know, kids, just don't do this. Please, I beg you. And so your parents could see you graduate and get married and have babies, and you know, have the privilege of watching you turn into the people that God intended you to be. And so that's all I have to say. Thank you. Oh, I do want to read one quick poem. It's called "Hello, My Name is Heroin." Hello, my name is Heroin. I destroy homes, tear families apart, take your children, and that's just the start. I'm more costly than diamonds, more costly than gold. The sorrow I bring is a sight to behold. And if you need me, remember I'm easily found. I live all around you in schools and in town. I live with the rich, I live with the poor, I live down the street and maybe next door. My power is awesome, try me, you'll see. But if you do, you may never break free. Just try me once and I'll own your soul. When I possess you, you'll steal and you lie. You'll do what you have just to get pie. The crimes you commit for my narcotic charms will be the pleasure you feel in your arms. You lie to your mother, you'll steal from your dad. When you see their tears, you should feel sad, but you'll forget your morals and how you were raised. I'll be your conscience. I'll teach you my ways. I take kids from parents and parents from kids. I turn people from God and separate friends. I take everything from you, your looks and your pride. I'll be with you always, right by your side. You give up everything, your family, your home, your friends, your money, then you'll be alone. I'll take and I'll take till there's no more to give. When I'm finished with you, you'll be lucky to live. If you try me, be warned, this is no game. If given the chance, I'll drive you insane. I'll ravish your body, I'll control your mind. I'll own you completely, your soul will be mine. The nightmares I give you while laying in bed, the voices you hear from inside your head, the sweats, the shakes, the visions you see. I want you to know these are all gifts from me. But then it's too late, and you know in your heart that you are mine and we shall not part. You'll regret that you tried me, they always do, but you came to me, not I to you. You knew this would happen, many times you were told, but you challenged my power and choose to be bold. You could have said no and just walked away. If you could live that day over, now what would you say? I will be your master, you will be my slave. I will even go with you when you go to my grave. Now that you have met me, what will you do? Will you try me or not? It's all up to you. I can bring you more misery than words can tell. Come take my hand. Let me lead you to hell.
I want to thank you both for not only being here tonight, but opening your hearts and your soul and sharing your experiences with us. And please, another round of applause for that. Thank you. I don't know about you, but how can you walk out of this building after hearing this, and you're going to hear another story from Nick later on tonight, without being moved? And again, I would ask that for all the students here tonight and the parents, please take it to heart. And again, thanks. I'd like to introduce our next guest speaker. Our next guest speaker is our DuPage County Coroner, Dr. Richard Jorgensen.
I'm the DuPage County Coroner, and I'm also a surgeon, so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the scientific aspects of it, and then I'm going to talk to you about the statistical aspect of the deaths that have occurred. So you've heard there are really only three paths to being a heroin addict. The number one path that we hope people is to get into rehabilitation and to live a sober life, and you're going to meet Nick Gore later, and he's going to talk to you about that. He's a success story. Number two path is you end up in the jail system, and you have Dennis Rebeletti put you in jail, and State's Attorney Berlin put you in jail, and you end up as a criminal. And the last thing is an overdose. And Unfortunately, we've had a horrific number of overdoses in the last 2 years, and this year especially, and that's led us to really trying to get these talks. I put this picture up there on purpose. Heroin is really, really a dirty, bad disease. Enough people have said it. I don't need to say it again. It all starts with a very beautiful flower, a poppy plant, which is very similar to the poppies that we have in America, but the poppies in America don't make heroin. But in the middle of the, if I can do this, I don't know, oh, there it is. Okay. In the middle of there, this little bud forms, and it becomes a pod like this, beautiful little flower and beautiful pod. And it's incised or cut, and this sap seeps out of it. And long time ago, for thousands of years, people have known that this sap has the highest content of morphine in it of any natural product. So it was the only way that we could get morphine, and so it became opium, and then later on has learned to synthesize the morphine out of this. And morphine is actually the common chemical that all of these drugs that we're talking about, that Chief Williams talked about, the opiates, these are all related to morphine, and all of them break down into morphine in the brain. So whether it's Vicodin or Percocet or heroin, it all breaks down into morphine in your brain, and that's where the high comes from. Opium is harvested by hand, and it's scraped off, and you get this tarry looking stuff. And back in the old days, when Chief Williams and I were younger, this is what was out there. It was called black tar. And it was so impure that it couldn't be snorted, it couldn't be smoked very well, and it wasn't really very effective. And people had to inject it. So as Chief talked about, that was a deterrent. Most people don't like sticking needles in their arm. But as been said by many of the panel members, today heroin is cheap, it's easy, it's available all over the place, and it is exceedingly pure. So now we don't have to inject it anymore. It can be smoked and snorted. So where did the drug we're talking about tonight, heroin, come from? And I do like to emphasize, we're talking about heroin tonight, and we're trying not to dilute it with other drugs that are out there in our discussion, because this is so exceedingly dangerous. And just heroin alone can kill you, and it's so very dangerous. That's why I want to talk about it. But heroin actually was developed as a medicinal, and in the British Isles it is still used as a pain medicine. It was developed by the Bayer company, and it was actually thought to be the chemical that was going to be able to get people off their morphine addiction. Here's an ad from the 1800s. You can see you can get your aspirin, and you get your heroin right here for using for your sedative cough. So it started out as a pain medicine, and it was very quickly found out to be very addictive and very dangerous. What does heroin do? Heroin affects your central nervous system, and it gives you a sleepy, euphoric feeling. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel happy. It is not one of the stimulant type drugs like cocaine or PCP and some other things. The police are never going to find a heroin addict kicking the doors in and going crazy. The heroin addict or the heroin user is going to be the person who's sleeping in the corner. It is a very euphoric drug. It really, really stimulates your sense of well-being. How does it work? It has to get into the body, so it's usually smoked or it can be injected. I call it that it has to get in the door. The chemicals have to get into the brain to work. And the reason why heroin is so effective is because it gets through the blood-brain barrier quicker, and then in the brain, then it's turned into morphine, and that's what gets you high. The golden goose is that it has to break down to morphine. Actually, heroin is not a drug that gets you, it does not stimulate the receptors as much as the other drug, but it needs to get down to morphine. And then getting a good reception, it attaches to receptors in your brain to stimulate the dopamine that State's Attorney Berlin talked about. How does it get into the body? It usually, probably these days, more smoked and than it is injected. Again, it has to get through the blood-brain barrier. And then this is what is so similar about it. Here's a picture of what a morphine molecule looks like. That's what a heroin molecule looks like. It has these two little arms on it, and that's what helps get through to the brain quicker, and it gets you so high so quickly, and then it turns back into morphine in the brain. I'm just going to skip through these a little bit because this is just explaining that you need to have a receptor in your body. And this is a slide that I got from the internet, so it has to be true. Thank you for that. I had to say that for Nick because he's going to demand me. But what this is dependence is on this side and physical harm is on this side. So this is a graph that shows a lot of the street drugs and a lot of the drugs that are available that are illegal. And so you can see where there's amphetamines in there and cocaine. But off the chart up here in the corner that is the most addictive and the most physically harmful is heroin. It is just off the chart of every one of the drugs there. So you can see that's what we're talking about, and that's why we're separating this drug out to talk about tonight. So what are the long-term effects of heroin? And there are no casual heroin users, and that's why I don't want to talk about other drugs. People do not use heroin like a couple times in a weekend and then not use it again and then do it a couple times in a weekend. It is a drug that very quickly addicts you, and once you're addicted, you are addicted, you're addicted, you're addicted. There is no other path there are no casual heroin users. It then severely changes your brain chemistry. It severely changes the neural pathways in your brain. And as Nick will tell you later, your whole body, your whole life, you're imprisoned by this drug. And part of the other things that happen to you is because you need to be addicted or you need to use a drug, you're not eating well. If you need to have money to feed your addiction, you're not going to feed your body properly. And so it's a very, very gradual downhill from there. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the demographics. So again, in my role as a coroner, I analyzed every death that occurred in 2012 and I just finished 2013, and I've got those in here as well. So there were 38 deaths in 2012 related to heroin. Very prominently a male disease. There's 30 out of the 38. In 2012, we had one 19-year-old all the way up to 56. So we had one teenager, 15 20-year-olds, 10 30-year-olds. And you can see that in the 20 and 30-year-olds and that there's a great diminution. And the reality is because you're either in jail or you're dead. This is not a long lifestyle of heroin use because it's very expensive, and you either overdose or you get caught doing something and end up in jail. We had a couple of 50-year-olds, 4 of them in that year. These were the cities where they lived, and I do not put this up there to implicate any city. The point of this is we have 33, I think, cities in DuPage County, and they're all over the place. They're the rich cities, they're the poor cities, they're the in-between cities, and there is not a hot spot in DuPage County that all the bad kids are in this town or that town. I've heard it said that, it's all the poor kids over there, and I've heard it's all the rich kids over there, and it's neither of those. I can tell you that it's in every community, it's in every high school, it's in every part of this county that we have. So these are the heroin deaths that in 2007 there were 22. You can see that by 2012 we're up to 38. In 2013 we had 46. That's an error. But we had 46. This is where we really went crazy this year. We were having about 1 death a week due to heroin overdoses, so about 4 a month. And that's horrible, I think. But look at what happened in July. In July, we had 11 heroin overdoses, and we had 18 total deaths due to drugs. So we had 7 other deaths that were due to cocaine and other various drugs. But again, we're just talking about heroin here. But we had 11 heroin deaths. So During the summer when we were having this huge onslaught, we had almost a body coming in every day to the morgue of a drug overdose. A number of us became very active in talking about this. You saw a lot of stuff in the papers and stuff. And I am hoping that this is the effect of that. I don't know if it is yet, but it might be. But you can see that in August there were 6, September there were 3, October and November there were 2, and this is not incomplete. There were no deaths in DuPage County due to heroin overdoses in December. So I'm hoping that what we're doing here tonight, and by talking and educating people and talking about this drug, that we're changing this death rate. In 2013, there were 46 deaths due to heroin, 39 males, 7 females, but this is what has just shocked us completely. We have had 5 teenage deaths in DuPage County due to heroin overdoses. And Chief Williams had the 15-year-old in his town, and when he and State's Attorney Berlin investigated the computers and phone records and stuff like that, they found 15, I believe that's the number, isn't it? It's 15 other students that were 15, 16, and 17 that were taking heroin that were friends of these, and no one knew about it. Again, now we have a couple 60-year-olds now. So what we're finding with some of these older people, as Chief talked about, is that this comes from my group, from the doctors that are giving people too many opiates. We have to be really, really careful about that. And then these are the towns again. Again, not to pick at any towns, but these are all the towns in DuPage County. We examined, we do toxicology with 350 different tests on every person that we examine who dies. And we found all of the drugs related to heroin. So we have heroin, these are morphine and codeine. Other drugs that are present in people that abuse heroin, lots of antidepressants. That's not because they're taking antidepressants because they get you high. It's because mental illness and drug addiction go hand in hand, and depression. So a lot of these people are on medications for their depression. Amphetamines not so much, and cocaine not so much, because those do the opposite things of heroin. That stimulates you instead of being euphoric. We did have a number of people, 11 of them had alcohol in their system, and 7 of them were highly intoxicated. So it's not unusual to do that. So there was not one person in any of these these toxicology studies that only had one drug in their system. So it's typical to use many different drugs. So I have a few other slides. I'm not going to go through those because I'd like to pass this over to our next speaker. But again, those statistics that I went through, Felicia pointed out to me the first time that we met that these are statistics, but they're not numbers. Nick is one of those numbers. So, and every one of those numbers there has a family story similar to Felicia and Angelica.
Thank you, Doctor, very much. If I can just, again, I don't believe in coincidence. We are truly blessed as a county. I travel all over the nation for law enforcement issues, and as I do, coroners are usually a political appointee in a lot of jurisdictions, and they have very little medical background at all. And some of them it's just an office, really, that works with the police and the fire departments. It really is kind of a miracle that Dr. Jorgensen came along when he did, because he has a voice with the medical community. Highly respected Chicago area surgeon for many, many years, highly acclaimed. And to have him here now is just like a perfect alignment of the stars to work with a very proactive and professional state's attorney. And you put those two people together, and it's just a powerhouse of kicking in doors. And through the Chiefs, DuPage County Chiefs of Police Association, and these two gentlemen, we've been kicking in the doors. We've been talking to the medical community, educational community, and because of that, we're here this evening. So again, thank you very much, Doctor. Real quick, I'd like to introduce this next gentleman, Nick Gore, again. I was tasked by the DuPage area chiefs to attack this issue, and we said, okay, let's get the cops out there, let's go undercover, let's start arresting everybody, and we did, and we did, and we did. And as Bob Berlin said so well, that's never going to be the answer. We can't arrest enough people. The jails will never be big enough. So we had to get them a little more proactive on that, and we said, well, the chiefs on our committee were sitting around talking one day, and we go, well, what would have an impact? And one of the chiefs said, you know what, I'll never forget somebody they brought into high school when I was a sophomore. That guy told it like it was, and he hit me in my heart. And I'm not saying I would have ever tried heroin anyway, but I tell you what, that guy spoke into my soul, and it made a difference. And we said, there it is. So we got busy, and we put the word out, and we asked those in some level of recovery to please come in, and those that were very passionate about this topic came in, and we did a lot of interviews. And it wasn't just one interview, because we know the dangers of relapse in this, so we would kind of make them jump through some hoops. There was many interviews, and they were kind of, okay, and we call them at a moment's notice, can you come on down, or hey, let's meet back here next week. And we did that with we started with about 17 total, 20, about 20 total. And when we finally got through that process, Mr. Gore was the last one standing. Nobody could make it through the process. They had all fallen back into the addiction. Sad to say several of them are deceased at this point. But at the point they were highly committed, and there was a lot of hope, and Nick is literally the last man standing. Nick is much more than just that, no. In a lot of ways, he's touched my life and changed my life, and I now consider him a friend. And I'm proud to introduce him to my son and my daughter, and we spent Thanksgiving together downtown Chicago in a home for the needy, and Nick has changed the addiction. Nick has found the answer. And it would be inappropriate to talk about religion here this evening, but there is a spiritual connection here. Nick found something larger than himself, and he adopted a servant's heart and a servant's spirit, and his addiction now is helping others. And if I can please give a big, warm welcome to Mr.
First of all, thank you so much for having us in here tonight on such a touchy subject, and one that obviously hits very home to me. It's always weird. We've done this quite a few times, to stand up in front of here, and you see all these things, and you try to piece it together. What does that person look like who was a heroin addict? And I stand up here in front of you tonight, and this is what your new age heroin addict looks like. It's normal people with normal childhoods, amazing families, and have gone for whatever path has led into heroin. I'm 29. I was born and raised in Bartlett. I still live there today. I have a younger brother who's 25. He's a Special Forces Marine, and I like to call him like Waldo or Carmen Sandiego, because we don't know where he's at in the world. He does crazy things, and he's my hero. So everybody has a hero, right? And I'll kind of make this comeback full circle with my brother on why he is my hero. I grew up, again, in Bartlett playing hockey. That was my life. Hockey drove everything. If I had to if I was sick and I had to stay home from school, I couldn't go to practice, so I didn't care. I went to school, sucked it up, and played hockey. That was my passion. And the reason I say that is that's kind of what led me into my addiction. As you can imagine, playing hockey, getting older, it's a little bit rougher, a little bit tougher, and start breaking bones. And when you have a collarbone that is looking like this, you probably need those narcotic pain medicines. And so that was my first introduction to narcotic pain medicines at an early age of 17. I don't know the exact first time I smoked pot or drank, but I do know the first time I smoked pot, I rode my bike into the lake and had to fish it out with a couple buddies. So I probably shouldn't have taken a hint right there that drugs just weren't going to mix well for me, in retrospect, right? So I start moving up playing hockey, and I'm starting to get looked at by teams, and I get an opportunity to go play hockey in Cleveland, Ohio, move away from home. Life at home was a little bit tough at that time. My parents were getting divorced. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of controversy, a lot of arms up in the air. Where are we going to go? How is this going to work? And what are we going to do? But with my parents' support, no matter what was going on, they allowed me to follow my dream. I was in Cleveland, Ohio for about 8 months playing hockey, and I developed a wonderful kidney stone. It was, I think I still hold the record for Akron County General Hospital in Ohio. It was like 19 millimeters. There's a boulder. You could see it from space, I swear to God. So they rushed me into immediate surgery. They put a stent in. They start hitting me with these lasers, and it's painful. And when you're in a legit need for pain, there's a need for pain medication. At that point, it was Oxycontin and Vicodin. And, I tried to put my finger on why didn't I become a drug addict at that point. And I think I just had enough maybe distractions in my life. I just wasn't ready to become a drug addict at that time. Or the pills worked how they should and just took away the pain and I didn't have to worry about it. So I escaped that. But that wasn't my first and only incident with narcotic painkillers. By the grace of God, I had a fiance at the time who was dealing with cystic fibrosis and needed a double lung transplant. She had it. She's healthy. And but there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of stress in that time. And I get another kidney stone. And now I find out that these pills don't only take away the pain, they take away my spiritual pain, that inner pain that you can't even really describe, which I'm sure you could all relate to, on just how that inner emptiness feels. And once I started popping enough of those pills, that was gone. I felt invincible. I could do this, do that for her. I was superhero, staying overnights, all these things. And that's where it started. Once your kidney stone's passed, the stent comes out. You can only lie for maybe another 2 or 3 doctors for another week to get more scripts. But when those scripts are out, you start getting what they call dope sick. And anybody who has unfortunately had to detox from an opiate, it is the worst thing you will ever go through in your life. It is, imagine the flu times 10, and you're maybe a quarter of the way there. You want to kick, you want to scream, you want to die, you want to pull your head out. There'd be times that I wanted to bash my head off of my dresser just so I could fall back to sleep in my bed because it was miserable. And as a normal person, that would be enough to stop, right? You're feeling like crap. You got to do all these things. You're buying pills on the streets. Now you're starting to maybe steal stuff around the house because pills are expensive. I pay my car payment. You get the picture. I went through a little bit of dry time, just put down the pills. But when you're not changing anything, when you become that drug addict and you just remove whatever that substance is that is in your case, you're still that same person. There's a lot of change that needs to happen because if you don't have that change, the only thing that you know to make yourself feel better is to run back to that drug. Mine was pills. That was my solution for a very long time. When I first started using drugs, it wasn't to cover emotions. It wasn't because I didn't really feel like I fit in. At times, that was the case, but I'm a kid growing up. And but once those drugs took over, I started having a lot more issues. I started experiencing depression, anxiety, and it went on from there. There was detoxes, detoxes galore. We still have medical bills, I'm sure, that they're calling for. But again, all those things will lead up to it. And the reason I spent a little bit more time talking tonight about pills as opposed to heroin, because that's exactly what led into my heroin addiction. I went to a detox at the end of 2011. I went up on my grandma's house because I was done with the drugs. I removed myself from Illinois. I didn't realize that drugs maybe had made it 5 hours north from where I'm at. And within 3 days of being in Wisconsin by my grandmother's house, I am now being booked in the Clark County Jail for 2 counts of felony burglary. Because now as a drug addict, I can remove myself from that. What I thought was the issue was the drugs and, all those other extracurriculars. The real issue is I'm the problem. And wherever I go, that problem comes with. So after spending, at Hotel Clark Jail, whatever, Coliseum, we tried to make it a nice place. It really wasn't. I spent a good portion of a month in there, and I had to go to rehab. And when I went to rehab, I was done. I could have passed a lie detector test that I wanted to be done, but I didn't know how to be done. When I went into rehab, I didn't know anything about heroin. I had a crash course in heroin. I was an opiate addict, which Vicodin are, so I sat in on the heroin awareness meetings, or the HA meetings. And I truly got a crash course on what heroin was. I heard so many crazy stories on there of overdoses and robberies and breaking into houses that would have scared any person straight. So it did for a good 10 months. You know, I did a little things here and there to stay out of jail, to appease my probation officer, to do this, to that. But at a point, I wasn't doing enough, and again, my only solution is to go get high. Now, I met a girl in rehab. I got a rehab girlfriend. God forbid anybody goes to rehab. Don't get a rehab girlfriend. Sick fixing sick is never a good idea. But I won concert tickets downtown. We drove downtown from, I think, KISS FM. Coming back down 290, traffic's bad. She says, oh, get off at Cicero, hook a left on Madison, you know, over here. And I'm like, wow, this is like where people buy heroin. She goes, yeah, you want to get some? No, I haven't done anything. Now, mind you, I'm completely sober at this time, and I have a choice in this matter. So one bad choice is this choice I'm about to talk about is what led to my ultimate demise. We turn the corner, we hook a left, some guy runs out, all of a sudden it's busted out on a CD case and I snort it. And the only thing that I can explain about the first time I did heroin, it was the worst experience of my life. I was throwing up, I was vomiting, I was itching, I was falling asleep. I had a cigarette in my hand, it burned me in the thigh. A typical, hardcore junkie heroin addict on day one. The first time I did it, I wasn't hooked, or I wasn't addicted, but I was hooked. After throwing up, feeling like garbage, doing all that, I had this warm feeling. Heroin has this elusiveness that it is giving you a hug while you're doing it. It is like you are just cuddled up in bed on a Thursday night in the middle of a winter, and you're just cuddled. You're warm. Nothing in the world matters. So Chief Williams talked about how it starts off as a $10 a day habit. That's absolutely true for about a day and a half. Because once you get into day 2 and 3 and you become addicted, now you're buying dubs, $20, you're buying 30s. Next thing you know, you're buying jabs, which are $100, not once, not twice, but 3 times a day, and you're committing felonies. In the process, I robbed my mom's safety deposit box at the bank. I stole a gun from a cousin of mine who's in law enforcement, and because I got robbed. And it wasn't going to be me, it was going to be somebody else. And then I had to, explain why I had $5,000 on credit card fraud that I had, embezzled from my company. Now let me back up a little bit. Those questions were mounting, during this thing. I'm starting all these fires everywhere. And to avoid those fires, what do I know what to do was just run. I ran to Wisconsin, look how that worked out. I know I can't run anywhere else except to a psych ward, a hospital, or rehab, and rehab was the first one that said yes. So I went to rehab on February 15th, 2012. My second to last bottom that I had in my life is when I had $100 left in my name, and it's Valentine's Day. And what guy doesn't want to take a girl out on Valentine's Day? So I'm flipping through my phone and I stop and I say, if I take this girl out, I can't, get dope. But I know this girl who will do heroin with me, so she could be my date. And then, stopped me dead in my tracks again and said, she's going to do my stash. Heroin became my date on Valentine's Day. And that sucked. That hit me not here so much or here so much, but right here. For the first time I could feel, just some pain for myself. Now, mind you, I'm causing pain on anyone else's life I don't care to see, but I had this little glimmer of what something felt like because I had numbed myself for so long. After being in treatment for 12 days, I thought it would be a good idea that I still know best, and I was starting to feel things. Those things I talked about, the gun, the credit card fraud. I had to answer those questions in my first family visit on a Sunday afternoon in a rehab facility with my mom and dad glaring down at me. Now, maybe you could have answered those questions over 2 or 3 lifetimes. I had them in succession in 10 minutes. Now, I'm starting to feel something, and my mom, I could see the pain. I could feel the pain in my mom's eyes for the first time. It's not that I didn't see it before. I could just feel it with her. And I'm my pity pot, and I think I know what's best. So I leave rehab after 12 days. I took the garbage out. I called a cab and took a cab to my mom's house. And by the way, they don't let people take garbage out anymore at the rehab facility I went to because you need adult supervision, otherwise you don't show back up. So kind of ruined that for other people, but in a good way. So I get to my mom's house, and I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to take my dad's shotgun, and I'm going to blow my head off. Or if my keys happen to be there, I'm going to take my car keys, I'm going to take my cell phone. I have like $73. I know that'll get me 8 bags, and I'm just going to go out at once. I'm done with this. By the grace of God, all the doors were locked. I break into my house, and those things are gone. And now what do? I have broken out of rehab. I mean, this is as I'm doing heroin. I break out of rehab. I have nowhere to go. I don't even know the garage code. So I've never self-inflicted any pain in my life. Maybe like a douche or whatever, like you dummy. But I needed to feel something. And I've never once done this in my life, and this took me a long time to even admit to, my parents how it really happened, let alone to a room full of strangers. But this is what heroin does to you. It steals your soul, and it makes you do crazy things. After breaking into my mom's house, realizing the gun isn't there, I can't go kill myself through heroin, I need to feel something. I take an 8-inch serrated butcher knife, and I cut through my Achilles tendon and laid it wide open. So I'm laying on the floor. I don't really feel it. I see blood squirting everywhere, and I called an ambulance on my own feeble suicide attempt. When nothing gets worse than that. And now I had tried AA or 12-step programs. I had tried going to see counselors. I had my mom's hugs trying to cure my heroin addiction. And none of that would work. And laying in the back of that ambulance that day, I remember looking up and just thinking, I can't do this anymore. Let me try something else. And to be honest, I haven't looked back since then. The day-to-day life of a heroin addict, it's a full-time job. You don't get a 401k, you don't get vacation days, you didn't get Martin Luther King Day off. Hell, I even had to go get dope on Christmas and told my mom I was going to Willow Creek Church for a mass, and as she's laughing out the door, knowing exactly what I'm doing, but she can't do anything. My mom had to love me from such a distance. The only time my mom is here tonight, which is awesome. Yeah, thank you. The only times during all of this, during my pills and in my heroin addiction, heroin lasted for me 11 months. I never shot heroin because I was afraid of needles at the start. That's how all of my friends who have died with a needle stuck in their arm have said that they were afraid of needles. The only thing that kept me away from them is I saw people shooting warm water because they were just addicted to the needle as they were the drug. And by the grace of God, if I would have stuck one in here the way that I did heroin, it would not have been here. It was truly 4, 5, 6 times, 6 trips down to the west side each day. And, it's Russian roulette that you play as a heroin addict. It's going to be the drugs that kill you. It's going to be the drug dealer. It's going to be the overdose. It's going to be driving under the influence and hitting a family of 5, which I almost did twice, nodding out, driving home down 290. But when you're a heroin addict, none of those consequences, nothing scares you. I've been to Cook County Jail. That's a really great place as a white kid from the suburbs. You just don't fit. That's the truth. I've lost a lot of friends in this process, and someone here tonight is very. I've lost more friends in this than I can count, and for me tonight to be standing here in front of you is truly a miracle. It's got to be probably around 10, 11, or 12 people that I've lost, and I'll be sober 2 years in the end of February. In those 2 years, I've lost, double-digit number of friends. My most recent friend, at the end of November, his dad is here tonight supporting this cause. The shit's no joke. I did it, I'm sorry, I swore. This stuff is no joke. They talk about that kid in who's 15 years old in here, around 15? Okay, so we have someone here. Like, what do you guys do, like, on a Tuesday? You have, like, a health class or something? Or gym, whatever. You have class, right? Okay, this kid tried heroin one time. He doesn't get to go to class on Monday. Like, he didn't get to go sledding. He didn't get to open Christmas presents. He doesn't get to go to homecoming, prom, anything. He tried heroin one time, and it killed him. I'm not saying go drink beer or smoke pot. I don't condone that at all. But I'm saying heroin is a beast of a different animal. It will kill you dead in one time. They want to say that heroin is they die of hot bags. I understand that they're cut with different things that make them more lethal. Every bag of heroin is a hot bag. You should not be sticking heroin anywhere near you, let alone in you. I can go on with war stories and stuff, but putting down the drugs is the easy part. Like separating going to a rehab facility like that at that point in your life, it's hard to understand. That's the easy point, right? You get a vacation. All these consequences, all these things have mounted up in your life that you need an escape for a month to go to rehab. You know what? Day 29, when you get out of day 29 out of rehab, that's when the work begins. Getting dated in a 12-step program. For me, it took, I'd gone through the rooms of AA 2 times, and, it's sticking this time because I had nowhere else to turn but to God and to the people of, a 12-step program. I lived in a sober house for quite a while where I had accountability that I didn't have because I can manipulate my mom. When I'm active in my addiction, I can lie, I can cheat, I can thief, I can manipulate with the best of them, and there's no two ways about that, and I'll argue that all day long with you. Which I'm not proud of, but that's where it has taken me. I helped run a sober house. I moved in with a friend, and I got a job, and, as you can imagine, as a heroin addict, like I've had repossessed cars, I've lost an engagement, I've lost everything a couple times. But the one thing that I lost, and I know I'm kind of jumbling around here, but the one thing that, as a heroin addict, that I've lost that is the hardest for me to regain is trust. So my uncle told me, when I was born in my family, I was born with 100% trust. And I kind of find that fundamentally to be true for absolutely every human being. You're trusted until you can take that away. And you know what? When you get even a little bit of taken away, trust is the hardest thing to get back. Purses are just finally being left out at family parties because I used to rifle through them. That was crazy at Christmas. I'm like, there's like 6 purses over there and nobody's even questioning it. My recovery today is doing things like this. Helping raise awareness for the kids who are going to try heroin one time and be hooked, then become addicted. I don't even know where I want to finish with this tonight, other than that staying sober for me today is not a hard thing to do because I supplement my time with positive, good things. I was fortunate enough to start a non-for-profit organization where we go when we give back. As a heroin addict, as any sort of alcoholic or addict, the only way that I know how to stay sober is getting outside of myself and helping other people. And that's the only way. Coming here and talking to you people, like everyone thinks like there's a total joke on all of you tonight. Like you're like, oh my God, we're gonna help, or we're gonna learn so much. He's helping us. Like, no, you're helping me tonight have my passion, like fulfill my passion and my purpose. Everyone wants to say if we could save one life in this and be affected, like, we don't really know, but I promise I'll keep showing up around and prove to you that all of your efforts by showing up here tonight truly mean the world to me because I get another day to live. Like, I had another chance to live today because of all of you people being here tonight. And that's something that, 2 years ago wouldn't have been possible. So, it's not that 8th, 9th, 10th bag of heroin that's, going to ruin your life. It's that first one. It's that first one. You're going to get it from a buddy. You're going to be introduced. When you, the first time you do heroin, your phone doesn't beep, and you have a drug dealer on the west side on standby now. It just doesn't work that way. If you guys have questions, we'll be here all night. Please take this home. Their challenge of cleaning out your medicine cabinet. My grandma and grandpa, they didn't have to worry about cleaning out their medicine cabinet because I did it for them. Other family members, like if you're selling your house on real estate or if your house is on the market, there's been a big thing going around where, people like myself or my past self, will go in your house and they will go in there and go through your medicine cabinets and take it. It's not because they want to come and rob your house, it's because they're sick. When you do heroin, you have a good 8-hour window of not being sick. As soon as like 8 hour and 1 minute hits, you start getting violently sick. So you go to sleep feeling all right and high, you wake up sick, honestly vomiting, diarrhea, muscle cramps, and that's how you get your day started until you can commit a felony, to fly to the west side, to hope to God that your drug dealer's out there and you don't even get ripped off, and that the dope is good enough that can at least somewhat, subside your dope sickness so you can go hit another felony and stay high the rest of the day. That is what a true heroin addict's life looks like. You wake up, you steal. You drive to the west side, do your dope, you steal. Skittles and Wendy's malts were my diet for a good 10 months because every cent that I had went to heroin, and there was no questions about it. So I thank you guys for being here tonight. Please ask a ton of questions. We'll be here, and thank you for being here.
Excuse me, is April still here? April, could you stand up? I hate to call you out, but April's son passed away. And it was the first time he did heroin. So I just wanted to thank her for being here and tell you guys that you could die the first time you do it. It happened to her. So I just wanted to mention that. There we go.
Thank you. And Nick, thank you. And for everyone here in the room, we wish you success in your continued efforts and success in the future.